Let's start with where the book starts and ends, New Orleans. Did you both decide you wanted to leave D.C. at the same time, or was there a lot of discussion about this move?
That's the great place to start and a great place to talk. Summertime and the living's easy. We also have a son, Todd DiLorenzo, who's here. So thank you, Todd. Thank you all for coming out. I kept saying, who's coming out on a Saturday afternoon in the rain? All right, New Orleans is playing, the New Orleans Saints are playing the Seattle Seahawks today. I want to hear a who dat? Who dat? Who dat? Okay, so that's what I bring that up because that's what we fight about. He's saying that we're an 8-point underdog. I say we're going to win. I loved New Orleans 20 years before I met James Carville, but after Katrina, when he said, "Sugar, we gonna become a sliver on a river." As I am from Chicago, anybody that's from the Midwest, you know that, and if you're a woman, any words that follow, sugar, you're just gonna melt. So I follow you anywhere, honey. The issue was the kids were then 10 and 12, and we had built our careers here, and I was a little nervous about having the children, the girls for whom I have some high academic expectations, to be in proximity with his academic record of 11 years at Louisiana State University. So I'll let you pick it up from there, honey.
Thank you very much. When it became public they were moving, the Post, a reliable source section, they called me and I said, look, I'm just like an old Jew. I'm going back to Jerusalem. It was my Jerusalem. After the events of August 2005, I lived upriver from New Orleans and did spend a lot of time there. My grandmother was from there. My grandparents got married there. And I'd always abused, partake of the culture and assumed that it would always be there for my use and pleasure whenever I wanted. And then the stories started coming in about whether people were going to come back and restaurants not opening, and I read that there were like 1,000 trumpets that were lost in the storm. And this kind of thing is, understand that the thing that sets New Orleans off from every other place in the United States is we're not a very economically significant area. In terms of political power, we have very little. We're only a city right now, 380,000 people. But what we are is probably one of the most culturally significant places maybe in the world. We have an identifiable culture that you know when you see it. You know what the food tastes like and looks like. You know what the music sounds like. You know what a carnival crew is. You know what a New Orleans funeral is. You know what New Orleans architecture looks like. And the idea that this whole thing could go, it was just like terrifying to me. And my wife, when we got married, she always loved it. She loves the sounds, the fragrance, the church bells, the rumbling of the streetcar. It sounds like no other place, but it is very, very fragile. Environmentally fragile, politically fragile, culturally fragile. And I didn't know what, but I just couldn't, I was just in profound depression. And then we were down in the 07, and just like, and she was as much for it as I was. And I clawed, fought, schemed, plotted, probably a couple other things that I'm not going to use, to get to Washington. I liked it here. I loved the airport. I loved the parks. I like my friends. I'm not a guy that I hate Washington. But I just had to go back home. I just had to. And it was so funny because, not funny, it's definitely not the words, but the day we moved is like the day that Tim died, June 13th. And I put it in the book, I was in the car going to Langenstein's, and if any of you have been in New Orleans, it's a kind of legendary grocery store in uptown New Orleans, and Al Hunt called me and says, I'll never, got to put in the book, I'll never go on Arabella Street again. He said, I got the worst shoes you can imagine. And it was almost like, you know, you want to leave? and it was I kind of opened a book there. But I really, and I think we were, and we look back and we talk about it sometimes, like how, in some ways, it's turned out great. The city is doing, it's one of the great success stories. And now that it's all doing better, it seemed like a really cool and smart thing to do. We went there, if we look back into the gamble we took moving our children, who were then very young, and like a place with a culture, it's not, it's hard to break into it if you're a child. It's not the easiest place for, and we have 2 girls, and it wasn't the easiest thing. And one of the things is, if you weren't there for what I call the engineering failure of 2005, which you refer to as Katrina, that's like you didn't fight in the battle. You're sort of a newcomer. And they did fine, don't get me wrong, but it was some element of risk involved here. And, you know, there was still stuff stacked up from the storm. I mean, it's nowhere near to where we are today. So it's like you walk into a casino, you know, and you put $10,000 on black, and it shows up black, and you go, man, that was really stupid to do that, even though we won. But thank God it's turned out pretty good.
I hope that was a metaphor, not a reality. But while we are in Washington, which we still do love, where we still have a home, where one of our girls came back to school on the grounds that, Mother, you just don't provide enough structure for me. So now she's at a boarding school. I want to say something good about politics. If you're at rock bottom, which we were after Katrina, you can't have the kind of, you don't have the luxury of kind of having the kind of disputes we have. You just got to come up with solutions. And we literally, the Mayor Landrieu did not want to run, and James did a poll that showed him how he could, and I said I couldn't support everything if he was going to do some liberal business, but on these issues that were practical conservative applications, I would be and lead whatever 3 Republicans that are in New Orleans for him. But to be a voice and to watch politics and policy work and work quickly is such an inspiration. Like we think, you know, this sense of this loss of confidence in all of our institutions and this sense of the decline and all that. Things can change fast if people want to change. And if people want to protect something they love, which they did in New Orleans, we went from 15 feet underwater to, by the time of the Super Bowl, we were #1. This is our best tourist year ever. We're #1 in Silicon Valley South. We're in #1 entrepreneurial capital. I could go on, but this is progress. Change is certain, progress is not. There is a way to make progress. And while I'm here, I want to make a pitch about coastal restoration because we all talk about the Everglades. Y'all should care about coastal restoration. 40% of the seafood, 40% or more of the energy, and 40% of your food comes up and down that Mississippi. And to the extent that that coast is eroding, that land is eroding, is going to impact the economy of the entire country. So there's a lot of issues there that we agree on politically, except for this 8-point underdog thing today. We like being on the same side of things.
Well, let's talk a second about something that you're not on the same side of. Cats.
I just have to say this, this is my motto, the presence of many cats is not proof of crazy cat ladyism. I do take James' point that cat hairs in the butter is not pleasant, but